this is a philosophical question that doesn't have to do with reality itself. Because we could not kill any methamogens on Mars even if we wanted to. We do not sterilize that planet. It's down and regulated. It's away from what we can do. The two exist in completely different atmospheres. So this is like a hypothetical question. If you could kill off an alien race and take over its planet, would that be okay or not? And if it's not conscious, etc., it's just bacteria. But it's a hypothetical question that goes into the realm of the purity of logic, the purity of metaphysics and philosophy in general. It's not a practical problem on Mars. So, okay, if we want to talk about it in the abstract,
well, then terraforming is also pretty much a philosophical exercise at this point. We're a long, long way from being able to do it.
Well, no, it's a future practical issue rather than a perpetually philosophical and abstract issue. I would say there's a difference between those two. And I do think that there is, if it is of scientific interest and basically a kind of existential interest to know whether we are alone in the universe or whether there's life in the universe. And this is an unanswered question. So immediately when you go to Mars, if you find that there is life there, then, well, it's like a decision tree on Mars. There's either life or it's dead. Okay, so then that's an either or. If it's dead, then it's dead, and then it's a question of, do we have responsibilities to the rocks around us as objects of beauty or something? But this is completely a matter of human aesthetics, you could say. If it's life, then you have an immediate question. Is it a separate start to life in the universe, or is it our cousin or ancestor? Cousin's the best way to do it. And that's a question we probably can answer by scientific study, by looking at its composition. And if it's completely alien, that's a finding that is so amazing that you might not want to disturb it, and you might want to leave it in some kind of a wilderness park that is simply a human decision about our own feelings about ourselves and our place in the universe. It's not a responsibility to those aliens because they're not conscious. It's a feeling about ourselves. Once again, almost an aesthetic decision. So as we go down the decision tree, the question is not simple. It's like there's different questions at different points along the way of the discovery. And you say we find life on Mars, it's going to be down underneath the surface of the ground, and we couldn't kill it even if we wanted to. So then it becomes a question of invasive biology. Would we want to cool a ball with a complete alien? It sounds kind of cool, Or do we not want to call it a complete alien because they might actually kill us in H.G. Wells style, in reverse?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that some people would be, if Martian life was discovered, they would be concerned about terraforming because of the possible unexpected effects of it back on us.
Well, and also the possible absolutely deleterious effects on it are starting it to evolve. One question in this is that, there hasn't been any tectonic plate action on Mars. These life forms, if they are there, were driven underground and had no change for 2 billion years. And this is the point I made yesterday, and sorry about that, we're caught in a little time loop here on these panels. And thank you for your indulgence, those of you who have already heard this. It's possible that these bugs under there just will not be, how can I say it, they might be irrelevant to the entire terraforming project.
So probably not.
So then, and yet, if you find that they're completely alien and you start to life, you've got one of the most important scientific discoveries in human history.
So we don't want to jeopardize that.
Right, exactly.
And admittedly, I've got a BA in architecture, and I have no more scientific background than the average fan. But I'm going to question the assumption that we couldn't possibly have any negative effect on these theoretical bugs by terraforming Mars, because any project at terraforming Mars is going to have to begin by raising the temperature substantially. And even if they're 10 meters down, the temperature, even 10 meters down, has got to increase as you raise the temperature at the surface.
Yeah, but what if they're a kilometer down? I mean, think about the Columbia basement bacteria. As deep as we've managed to drill, if there's breaks in the bedrock on Earth, there's life there. These weird little forms.
So now, what you're saying is that terraforming is that we don't have to worry about it. There's no ethical issue obligation because even terraforming the entire planet would not wipe these bugs out. But then we come down to the question of failure to wipe out is not necessarily ethically equivalent to failure to negatively impact. That do we have any obligation, any ethical or, as you say, aesthetic obligation to this form of life? Is it fair for us to even disturb it?
But that's, come on now. But seriously, we don't worry about microbes on this planet.
But if they're aliens, but they're aliens. I'm always willing to admit that if they're aliens, they're of special scientific and philosophical interest to us, being aliens in a fresh start to life. Well, they haven't had any disruptions for 2 billion years, and this is one argument, by the way, that they are not there, and this methane finding is simply not correct and doesn't indicate life. And Chris McKay, my guy at NASA, the argument is that you need tectonic plate action. The species generally live only about 10 million years, and without change, without evolution, there will be extinction.
That's a completely species argument.
We
have no information about whether things can last longer. I can point to you right here those layers from analyze that have been here for over 3 billion years, so that they don't.
Well, they don't have the fossils of the life have been here for 3 billion years.
We have no evidence of what happens to life in the absence of geological change.
Yeah, we have no evidence. That's why
and that's what makes NASA so intriguing. That makes Mars so intriguing.
But the point is, I just say, you're making a mistake if you regard this as an ethical issue when you're adrift on an ocean of ignorance. You can revisit this when you have some idea. Everybody talks about ethics as though it's obvious what it is, but in fact there are many theories of ethics, and some of them don't accept premises that most people like.
And I'm going to question the statement that they're only microbes. We wipe out microbes every day. The thing is that
I didn't say they're only.
Well, okay.
I said they're within.
Okay, but still, the statement that it doesn't matter if we wipe them out on Mars because we wipe out creatures like that on Earth all the time. And anyway, we couldn't wipe them out completely even if we tried.
But on the other hand, I didn't say it doesn't matter if we wipe them out. I said you don't regard this as an ethical issue here, and ethics is the wrong word to use on this. It's too early to talk about ethics when you are so ignorant. What you really need to do is find out things. And by the way, it's certainly true that you can find out a lot about these microbes without doing much disturbance. If you look at the size of those patches of methane, they're thousands of kilometers across. You're not going to go there and somehow mysteriously wipe out all life on the planet while you're arriving.
But is it just not true? She shifted then. I mean, I'm taking your point. It's not a question of ethics so much as an accurate scientific practice, and you don't want to disturb the object of study because then you won't actually have seen what you're looking for. So, and this is sort of the Lake Vostok problem. Can we get a look at these things without actually contaminating the site and then beginning to look at things that aren't Martians but are our intruders to us? Yeah. And that's actually a problem with procedure that has stopped us from breaking into Lake Vostok, which is this giant lake underneath the ice cap in Antarctica. As much water as Lake Ontario and underneath, 10,000 feet of ice cake. And they drilled down to within a couple hundred meters and stopped because they know for sure that there's some bacteria on their drill tips and you can't sterilize them. So the moment they break into the lake, they've contaminated the lake. And now this is this problem.
Technical question.
Yeah, this is a technical question of procedure and science rather than an ethical question of all these bugs.
I used some inappropriate and incorrect terminology. The point that I was trying to make, the point that I was trying to approach is that although it's not an ethical question to disturb microbes on Earth, the question that I'm approaching is it an ethical question to disturb the most advanced form of life on a planet, even if that form of life is only methanogen?
Well, again, I don't think ethics really is the right word to use here, but even if you regard it as an ethical issue, you actually can't even know anything without doing some measurement. And in fact, Vostok is a good example. There are actually dozens of such lakes, although none are quite as big or quite as deep as Vostok so far. We can look at the other lakes, and we can look at different sites on Mars. These patches are huge. It's an illusion, fantasy to think that if you go down and make one measure on the surface of Mars, wham, it kills everything else on the planet. And everything we know about life says that doesn't happen. Well, there are methanogens down 3 kilometers below the surface of the Earth. And measuring that does nothing to disturb it. If you introduce oxygen, you can kill some of them.
But only local.
But only local. So you can do local experiments.
Well, and when we talk about, you know, the title of the panel is the Bioethics of Terraforming. You know, we're looking at the question of when it comes down to the point that maybe we've done the investigations and we've determined, let's just posit that we've determined that there are forms of life, something that to the average person on the street is probably uninteresting and invisible. But let's suppose that it comes down to a choice of, do we terraform Mars and make it habitable to ourselves and possibly damage or destroy the existing life form? Or do we take some step back or step away completely? You know, how do we make the decision? How do we make the decision of whether to take this action on something that is so alien to us, alien both in terms of being from another planet and in terms of being extremely unlike us?
Well, first you find out a lot.
Yes.
You don't try to answer these questions right now when you're surveying. Christopher Columbus thought he had discovered a new world, but in fact he never made contact with it, he just landed on islands. The main issue is going to be, first we find out these things. Everything we know about microbial life says that it's going to be really, really hard to do significant damage to it.
Because in order to survive at all, it has to be tough.
Right, but the novel I wrote about this, The Martian Race, points out, as Kim has said, you haven't been seeing any plate tectonics on Mars for billions of years, fine. But it's also true that the gravity is 0.38 Gs. That means the porosity of the rock is larger. It means whatever channels and caves there are, and we've already seen many large 100-meter scale caves in the openings of the surface, those have been there for billions of years. This is a fixed environment with energy flow to it because it's hotter on the interior, colder on the outside. And therefore, in that sense, it's a very stable place. And we don't know anything about evolution in fixed conditions. We just don't know. Except we do know that the stromatolites have existed in various of the oceans of the Earth for over 3 billion years, and they're still around. So it's a really different form of life, and I imagine in a novel that you would find advanced forms, biofilms, basically, which have also evolved here from microbial origins. And it's a real great wonderland. So this is a great thing to explore, and I think it's the one important scientific issue you can answer by solar system exploration, and therefore we should seize upon it. Because I used to serve on the Mission Cabinet for NASA when Dan Golden was the administrator, and he said to us in the last meeting we had, just as he was resigning, he said, we have to really get NASA in the business of engaging with the world public and keep it on the front page, because I think, given the policies of this economy, I think somewhere by 2020, there won't be enough money to throw it away on doing nothing in NASA. That is, finally somebody in the Senate is going to say, you know, I need this money for my farm support program, and there it goes. You should not assume that you will have forever to attain the goals of NASA. It may end.
And what I've been saying when I talk with friends about the NASA budget and what NASA is doing, that we're not likely to go to Mars. We wouldn't have gone to the moon if it hadn't been for the Cold War. That we're unlikely to go to Mars unless and until something completely unrelated to Mars itself changes in order to make going to Mars a national or planetary priority for citizens.
Well, but then why are the Chinese going to the moon? The Cold War is over.
Their economic Cold War with the West is far from over. I think this is an important step.
Then why are the Indians planning to go to the moon? You can see the next movie.
Yes.
The point is, it's not the only motive to go to the moon. People do it for national prestige.
And the thing, no, I'm sorry. I wasn't intending to imply that the only reason we would go to Mars is because of the Cold War.